An interval is the distance between two pitches, and each interval has a unique name. Interval names are separated into two parts, quality and number size. Here's the information from a particular interval. This is a major third. The abbreviation is here. We will discuss the abbreviation a little bit later. The quality is major, and the number size is 3. Now, although in the abbreviation the quality comes first, and in the name the number size comes second, you always, when determining intervals, determine the number size first. Determine the number size first. And in case I didn't mention, you determine the number size first. This is very important because if you do not determine the number size first, then you will be in a world of hurt. So just be careful, make sure you determine the number size first. Determining the number size is pretty easy. As long as you can count, you can determine number size. I'm going to put two pitches here on the staff, a G4 and a B4, and I'm going to start with the G. So obviously you start with the first pitch, and then you count, starting with 1, every line or space in between the first pitch and the second pitch, and you end up with the number size. The most important part about this is to make sure that you begin your count with 1 on the first note. You won't end up with the right number if you don't start with 1 here. So I'm going to start with 1. The next place would be the space here. That would be 2. And then the next line is where the next note is, so that's going to be 3. So 1, 2, 3. The number size of this particular interval is a third. 1, 2, 3, pretty easy to do. If I raise this up to here, then the number size is now 4. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and this is a fourth. If I raise this up to here, then this is going to be a sixth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's fairly simple. And speaking of simple, this is an example of what's called a simple interval. A simple interval is an interval that is within the range of an octave. So here's an octave. From E to E is considered to be an octave. An octave is still a simple interval. Anything that's an octave or less, so again within the range of an octave, is considered a simple interval. If I raise this E up by a step, this now becomes what's called a compound interval. We will only be discussing simple intervals in this video, so I'm going to get rid of those, and we're going to take a look at a few more intervals here. So when you're first determining intervals, and if you haven't had much experience, you may have to count, just like we were doing just a little bit ago, where you start with the first note, and then you count up a couple of lines or spaces, and you end up with the number size. However, after a while, you will start to recognize patterns, and you'll notice that similar intervals look similar to the same intervals. Let me show you what I mean. Thirds always look like thirds, regardless of where they are on the staff. So if two pitches are a third away, they're always 3 notes away on the staff. The third, being an odd-numbered interval, it makes it so that the first pitch will match the second pitch in where they are located on the staff. If the first pitch is on a line and you have the interval of a third, then the second pitch will also be on a line. This is another third. The first pitch is in a space. The second pitch will also be in a space. And that's true of all odd-numbered intervals, not just thirds. So thirds, fifths, sevenths, unisons even, which we'll discuss in a little bit, all share the same characteristic, that they are on the same part of the staff. So here's a fifth from G to D. Count the number size, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to prove it. And both of them are on lines. If I take this note down to here, this is a seventh from D to C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because it's an odd-numbered interval, the notes will be either both on a line or both in a space. If you just think about it a little bit, if the odd-numbered intervals are going to be in the same part of the staff, the even-numbered intervals will be in different parts of the staff. This is a second from G to A. So G, A, 1, 2. That's a second. Number size of 2. Number sizes that are even, 2, 4, 6, 8 even, will be in different parts of the staff. So because this is a second, the first pitch is on a line, the second pitch will be on a space. If the first pitch is in a space, like this D, and it's an even numbered interval, like a sixth, such as this, the second pitch will be on a line. So you can use that just as a little trick. But like I mentioned, after a while you start to get used to just the physical relationships between these notes. And thirds will always look like thirds no matter where they are on the staff. They can be way below the staff, it still looks like a third. The sixth can be way above the staff and it still looks like a sixth. Once you get used to what each of the intervals look like, the number sizes become quite easy to determine. Okay, so I have two thirds here on the staff, G to B and A to C, in different measures from each other. Now, both of these intervals share the same number size because both are 3 notes apart on the staff. Although the number sizes are the same, the actual physical distances between the two intervals are different. If we take the piano keyboard, we can measure these distances. From G to B, if we count on the keyboard, is 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps difference. So 4 half steps between G and B. From A to C would be 1, 2, 3 half steps. So this is 4 half steps, this is 3 half steps. Although the number sizes are the same, they are different distances from each other physically. That means that these are of different qualities. Now, if we took the time to analyze all of the naturally occurring thirds, that would mean all the thirds that would be occurring on the white keys of the keyboard. It would be like these, and so on and so forth. All the thirds, if we looked at all of them that naturally occur, then we would find that all of them are either 3 or 4 half steps in size. And the two names that we use to describe these naturally occurring thirds are major and minor. This is an example of a major third, and this is an example of a minor third. If we think about these two terms, major and minor, outside of their musical meaning, they basically mean large and small. And major intervals are the larger of the naturally occurring intervals, thirds in this case, while minors are the smaller. Since thirds naturally appear either 3 or 4 half steps apart from each other, the 3 half step distances or the smaller distance is the minor, and the larger is the major. Now, in musical terms, the difference between major and minor is a little bit more involved than just the difference between large and small. Some may refer to the difference as being bright versus dark, or happy and sad. And major intervals tend to have a little bit more of a bright or happy sort of quality, while minor intervals are a little bit more dark or sad. And this difference is definitely easy to hear when listening to thirds. So I'm going to actually see if I can get this to play some thirds at the same time. So I'm going to condense this a little bit. Let me get rid of this. I don't need that anymore. Get rid of that note. And I'm going to take that B that I had a little bit earlier, and I'm going to put it at the same time as the G. And actually, I'm going to have the A and the C play at the same time as well. Okay, so here, this is what the major third sounds like. Okay, I let it go on to the next one. This is the minor third. Now, it's a little bit difficult just to hear these out of context, to hear these qualities, but there is a difference between these two. There's definitely a different characteristic. There's the bright and dark, happy, sad, however what you want to refer to them. So anyway, this first interval, remember I had put major third above it. Major third is abbreviated with an uppercase M and the number 3. So that would be the abbreviation for major third. The abbreviation for minor third would be this. It's a lowercase m and a 3. Now, when I'm typing them on a computer keyboard, it's very easy to tell the difference between uppercase and lowercase m's. When you're handwriting them, you have to make sure that it's very clear whether you're writing uppercase or lowercase, as to avoid confusion between the two. One trick, there's a couple of tricks. Make sure when you're writing your lowercase m that it has this little flag on it there on the left stem. And when you're writing your uppercase, make sure that it has nice pointy edges at the top of the M. Something else that that I will do just to completely avoid confusion is to put a little line above the minor. Now, it's not necessary, but it's to me it really helps just for clarity, so that there's no chance of mistakenly thinking that it's uppercase. Now let's take a look at all of the naturally occurring simple intervals. We're going to skip unisons for now because they're just slightly more complicated than the others, so we'll end up with those. Now, I'm going to put down a second here from G to A. It has a number size of 2. Start with G, count up, starting with 1, we end up with 2. Therefore, this is a second. I'm going to put down another second, this time from E to F. And just as we saw in the thirds, although these are the same number size, they are different distances from each other physically on the keyboard. From G to A is a whole step, so 2 half steps. But from E to F is only a half step. So this is 1 half step difference, this is 2 half steps difference. So these are different qualities. This is the major second, this is the minor second. Now, if I refer to the keyboard and look at all the naturally occurring seconds, and let me clarify this actually a little bit at this point when I say naturally occurring. I'm talking about all the notes that are within the white keys of the keyboard. So I'm just thinking as if I'm in C major, so no sharps, no flats. So I'm thinking about pitches that are within a key. That, when I'm talking about being within a key, I'm thinking of diatonic intervals or diatonic pitches. Diatonic just means within a key. So let's say if we were in the key of D major, we would have F sharps and C sharps in the key signature. So if you have an F sharp and a C sharp, those will be diatonic pitches. So if you look at all of the seconds that occur diatonically, they will all be either major or minor seconds. Just as with thirds, those are not the only types of seconds. They are just the most common, so that's what we're starting with. Major and minor are the diatonic seconds. So business is a little bit different when we get to fourths. So let me put down a fourth. How about from an E to an A? And then we're going to put down, oops, there we go. And then we're going to put down an F to a B. Okay, so fourths are just a little bit different because of the acoustic properties involved in the relationships between the two pitches. So first of all, there is no such thing as a major or a minor fourth. This is very, very important. It's an easy mistake to make, or it's an easy mistake to avoid as well as calling a fourth either major or minor. There's no sort of happy or sad or dark or bright quality for fourths as there was with seconds and thirds. They're a little bit more nondescript. You kind of need another pitch involved in order to give them some personality, most of the fourths. So the naturally occurring fourths, if we looked at all of the naturally occurring fourths on the piano keyboard, we would see that almost all of them are 5 half steps away from each other, such as E to A. So from E to A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. We would see that all of the fourths would be 5 half steps away from each other. Again, I'm going to put us back in the world of C major. If we look at a fourth from C, that's C to F, 5 half steps. D to G, 5 half steps. Same for all of the pitches until we run into this one, F to B, this second one that I put up here. F to B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half steps. So it's larger than the others. So this one, 6 half steps. Let me just make a note of that. So 6 half steps. This was 5 half steps. Okay. So if we continue and start from G, G to C is 5 half steps. This is 5 half steps. This is also 5 half steps. So of the 7 possibilities when looking at fourths within a key, diatonic fourths, 6 of them are 5 half steps, and only 1 of them is 6 half steps. The 5 half step variety are referred to as perfect fourths. Now, perfect has to do with the acoustic properties of the fourth. If we looked at the sound waves created by both of these pitches, the sound waves would actually mesh a lot better than they would in a second or a third. There's a lot less disturbance. And because there's way less disturbance, the notes fall in line with each other a lot better, and we refer to them as perfect. It doesn't mean at all that they're better than the other intervals. Obviously, it's just that's the term that we use to refer to most fourths. Again, 6 out of 7 of the diatonic fourths are perfect. This one, being a little bit larger, is not perfect. And again, there's no such thing as major or minor. This is what's called an augmented fourth. Augmented means made larger. So a fourth that's larger than perfect, or 6 half steps, it has to be 6 half steps, just 1 half step larger than perfect, is augmented. We abbreviate the perfect fourth as P4, and it's an uppercase P. So a perfect fourth is this. An augmented fourth, there's a few different ways that you may see this abbreviated. This is the way that I prefer with an uppercase A. You may also see this, the +4. The plus usually is the abbreviation for augmented, but I'm going to use the uppercase A. So we have perfect and augmented. These are the only types of diatonic fourths. Again, there are more types of fourths than these. These are just the only diatonic intervals. That's all that I'm worried about for right now, are the diatonic intervals. Fifths are similar to fourths. If we look at all the diatonic fifths, we'd see that 6 out of 7 of them are 7 half steps apart from each other, like G to D. We'd see that on the keyboard if we start with C. So this, if we build a fifth off of each one of these, this would be 7 half steps. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 6. This is the odd man out. If we start with a B, from B to F is the only fifth that is not 7 half steps. The only diatonic fifth that's not 7 half steps. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half steps. So it's smaller than the standard 7. Okay, so these are the only 2 types of diatonic fifths. The most common, again 6 out of 7 of them are 7 half steps, is just as the fourth was called. This is a perfect fifth. The perfect fifth is abbreviated P5, and this kind of fifth was 1 half step smaller than a perfect fifth. Now remember, augmented means made larger. To make a perfect interval smaller, you need to diminish it. So this becomes what's referred to as a diminished fifth. The diminished fifth can be abbreviated in this way. This is the way that I prefer. D5, and I use a lowercase d. Usually when I'm referring to the smaller intervals, diminished and minor, I use lowercase. And for the upper cases, those refer to major, augmented, and perfect, although perfect's kind of right in the middle. You may also see, I don't know how to do the degree symbol right now, but it would be a degree symbol, just like at the end of a temperature reading, which refers to diminished. But again, I prefer the lowercase d. So fifths, just as fourths, do not come in major or minor qualities. There are only perfect and diminished diatonic fifths. Okay, we're going to finish these diatonic intervals out because there's not many left. Sixths appear in 2 forms. There are major sixths and there are minor sixths. The major sixth is 9 half steps. The minor sixth is 8 half steps. So these are major and minor intervals, just like seconds and thirds were. Sevenths, here's an example of a seventh. Actually, I'm going to switch this like this. An F to an E is a seventh, and then I'm going to put here a G to an F. The reason I changed those is because this is a major seventh, this is a minor seventh. F to E is 11 half steps, so it's 1 half step smaller than an octave. And G to F is 2 half steps smaller, or 10 half steps. This is a major seventh, this is a minor seventh. Again, major, minor. So the intervals come in 2 different classes. There's the major minor intervals, seconds, thirds, sixths, and sevenths, and there's the perfect intervals, fourths and fifths. There's a couple that I left out. There are the unisons, and then there's also the octave. Okay, so let's talk about the octave first. The octave is similar to fourths and fifths. This is considered a perfect octave. Diatonic octaves are always perfect, and most of the octaves that you'll run across are perfect, just like this. Now, if I take this pitch and I raise it by a half step without changing the pitch name, so I turn it from an F to an F sharp, this is still an octave because it still has the number size of 8. We'd count from the first one to the second one, and we'd still be at 8. But the half step difference is now 13 as opposed to 12. This is no longer a perfect octave. This would be an augmented octave, A8. Now, if I take this F and I put a flat in front of it instead, this is now a diminished octave. Now, diminished octaves and augmented octaves are rare, but they are possible. So again, diatonic octaves are always going to be perfect. So just usually plan on them being perfect, but just be aware for the potential of augmented or diminished octaves. Now, if we have two of the same pitch and we look at the number size, we'd see that the number size has to be 1. You start with 1 on the first pitch, you stay at 1 on the second pitch, so this has the number size of 1. Intervals with the number size of 1 are referred to as unisons. So these are a unison. When they're exactly the same pitch, they are perfect unisons. Whoops. So this is a perfect unison. Perfect unisons we abbreviate as P1. So this is a P1. Just as with octaves, if I put a sharp on the second note, but I don't change its placement on the staff, this goes from perfect to augmented. So this is an augmented unison. You'll see augmented unisons from time to time. They're actually not common, but you'll see them. What you will never see, because they do not exist, is this interval, the diminished unison. It does not exist. So let me explain this. If I take this F and turn it into a flat, you may think, well, if I follow the same logic as we used for the octave, this is now a diminished unison because it's been made smaller. There's no way to make a unison smaller than a perfect unison. They're already exactly in the same place. To diminish an interval means to make it smaller. Since you cannot make it smaller, you cannot have a diminished unison. This is actually an augmented unison. I didn't mean to put that exclamation mark, but maybe I did. So augmented unison. This is an augmented unison because it has been made larger, not smaller. When we took the first pitch and changed it from an F natural to an F flat, we made this interval larger. So it became an augmented unison. So we have augmented unisons and we have perfect unisons. We do not have diminished unisons. There's just no such thing as a diminished unison.